Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen, who is clearly upstaging me with a pretty slick background if you're watching
Thank you.
on YouTube. If you're on podcast players, make sure to give us a review. But we're going to look at the European Continental Championships is what it's called, even though there's some countries here which are not on the European continent. The road race, and we'll mention the TT results as well. We've got all the hitters here that you'd expect. We've got Balsamo, quick for Italy, but Longoborghini and Cavalli for Netherlands. They have 8 riders. 8 riders. So that makes a big difference to the Olympics, I think, which we'll talk about in a second. But they got the likely suspects of Vos, Vollering, Van Vleuten, Van Dijk, Van der Broek, Black, Peters, Marcus, Floortje Mackay. Germany have Juliana Lippert and they got Brennauer as well. Belgium's got Lotte Kopecky, but just Benji, is the Belgian depth? It's not quite as strong as the Dutch depth in terms of like a Floortje Mackay and Rihanna Marcus, Amy Peters. They're much stronger than the domestic support for Kopecky, right?
Yeah, certainly. I feel like in this race we've got Julie van der Velde, who's arguably one of the stronger riders. She's a rider on Jumbo-Visma and has been performing pretty well over the course of the season. But the majority of our team was expected to drop on the earlier climbs. Like Jessie van der Bulke, I wasn't expecting her to get over the first 5 climbs of this Polvo climb in the race. So I feel like I don't mean that bad for that rider, but in general, it's just not an in-depth team that could try and control the race for Kopecky. So she has to try and benefit from other teams doing it for her. And that's difficult to win like that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to shit on them. I'm more saying, as Benji said, Kopecky's a sprint-style rider. It's tough for her. She can't just go long, one would think. So she wants a controlled race. So it's tough for her. France have got Cordon Rigaud, who's probably, I'd say, their best rider, or Juliette Labou. Other isolated riders who are good or not so strong teams, Katrina Allerud, Norwegian for Norway on Movistar, as well as Marlon Reusser only has 2 teammates on Switzerland. Lelia Viete, the Lithuanian's always strong, as well as Zigart on Slovenia. But I'm probably missing someone, but they're the main names we have. Oh, Niewiadoma as well. Sorry, Kasia Niewiadoma, can't forget, on Poland, who actually had a team of 6 or 7. So they dropped as well. It's the same as the problem with Belgium. They had 8 riders, but they dropped early. This course was quite attritional. I don't actually quite like the parcours, 110 Ks. It's 3.6 Ks at 4.7%. They do the Povo climb 8-9 times. It finishes, though, the last climb crest with 12 Ks to go, then a descent, and then 6-7 Ks of flat in the run into the finish, which is a cobble technical finish. Pretty flat, a little bit draggy, but yeah, I think that climb has 2 Ks at about 6.5%. It's the start of it's pretty easy. But Benji, we had Netherlands and France and Italy trying to get riders up the road early in this race.
Yes, certainly. The most notable team that started off sending people up front was France, because in the earlier climbing sections in this Polvo circuit, the tempo in the peloton wasn't that high, and then every round, every circuit, we'd have 1 or 2 attacks. And first of all, it started off with Cordon Rago going in the breakaway. She ended up being caught again because that attack didn't really go too far. And eventually she was caught. Duval went for France just when she was caught. And when Duval ended up being caught, it was again for Cordon Rago. And it kept on going like that. And it's potentially a strategy that they also used in the U23, I think, in this, European Championships. And it was once again Duval going afterwards. Didn't really go that far, and Bionic was the next to go. And that's when Casper German followed in as Italian, and Ellen van Dijk went in that attack as well. So a 4-rider breakaway trying to get away in this point in the race. And this was with roughly 55k to go that this started. And it was mostly Ellen van Dijk doing the work initially, because she tried to get other people to work with her, but at the start it didn't really go that well. And then suddenly everybody was working together once the gap was formed. Then it was up to the Netherlands to decide, do they trust Ellen van Dijk in this breakaway or not? And what's your take on that?
Well, Italy were happy with it. They got Paladin there. They're like, she's pretty good, Soraya Paladin. She's been good this year. 50-50 against Ellen van Dijk, let's say, with the German not looking too good. That's good odds. That's better than ELB against a whole host of characters in the peloton. For Germany, on paper, it's great tactics. Get a rider in the break. You don't have to pull someone up the road. Fantastic. But it's not fantastic when that rider inevitably is going to get dropped on a climb, and then you have to chase a 50-second gap, a minute gap. So you're just creating a bigger problem for yourself later. For Netherlands, I think they did what they did in maybe the 2018 World Championships or 2019. No, not World Championships, European Championships. Might have been the Glasgow one, maybe the year after, where they just chase at like 50 seconds. Marcus just keeps the gap getting outrageously big because then Paladin has to keep working with Ellen van Dijk. If that gap goes to 3 minutes, 4 minutes, I don't think she'd pull with Ellen van Dijk anymore. So maybe that's why they did it. Maybe they didn't trust it. I don't know. They kind of stopped after a while, and the gap kept getting bigger until Germany. There's no race radius, by the way, no team radius. They don't know gaps. Germany eventually got on the front when the German got dropped and came back with, I don't know, like 30, 35 Ks to go. And it's something we don't see, Benji, but it's what they should do. When you get dropped out of the break with the no race radios, you should basically stop on the road so that so that your team behind can see. And it didn't happen with Paladin. Do you think so? Then, sorry, continue on. So Germany chasing, the gap's under 30 seconds, 22 seconds, 25 seconds even. Paladin gets dropped with under 30 Ks to go by Ellen van Dijk. She's gone. Do you think if Paladin sat up there, this would have changed what happened behind? Because Italy did not know that she'd been dropped.
Yeah, I think it does change the strategy that comes behind, because Italy would be more prominent to do something and would most likely, end up starting to chase as well, I would expect, if Ellen van Dijk is at the front. Unless they want to play it risky and they see that Germany's spacing and they say, like, okay, we're going to silently pretend that we didn't notice that Paladin was dropping and we'll let Germany take care of the work. But once again, that's risky with Ellen van Dijk at the front. She's very strong at time trialing. We've seen that before. Obviously, the climbing sections are not her ideal terrain, but she's not bloody terrible at them, as we could have seen this entire race so far. And eventually, Germany just kept on pacing without Italy kicking in for that chase. And Germany was prepping something, because we had some people drop already in the earlier parts of the race. Marianne Vos, for example, for the Netherlands, didn't seem like she was having the best of days. And I don't know, it felt like we had less prominent strength in the Netherlands in the peloton than other races. Is that something I saw, or is that something that in general was the feeling?
I think it became apparent maybe the first attack so Lippert attacks with like 23 Ks to go maybe. Yep. It's the second last climb she attacks. Very, very strong attack. Big separation to the group behind. Maybe it caught Netherlands off guard. I think Lippert, she didn't know that Paladin had been dropped, so she didn't know that Italy were probably about to start chasing. So she attacks maybe half out of panic because her team was spent. And so it's like you either attack here with them bringing it to 30 seconds or whatever it was, 40 seconds, or that gap's going to go out again when no one takes over. So she's like, I have to attack now, see who can come with me. Niewiadoma responds very strong in a 30 to 45 second burst on a 6% climb this year. And as Benji said, Van Vleuten not off the back, like she's gapped as well as Vollering, and they take a long time to claw back to Lippert and Niewiadoma. Reusser is there as well as Lelevita for the Lithuanian, Marta Cavalli and Longo. I think Longo Borghini counters over the top because they catch Lippert's attack catches Paladin. Longo Borghini counters, but we've still got Ellen van Dijk up the road, and they even brought her into eye shot. They got that gap down to like 8 or 10 seconds. Yep. It was very small. It was. Yeah. And then they stop. They get to maybe the bottom of the descent. We've got a group, as I said, of Reusser. So everyone's isolated except the two Italians, Longo Borghini and Cavalli. Yep. Then we have Reusser, just won the ITT. We'll mention the results at the end. Very strong. She looked good at Love Welter Challenge. She's got one climb left. Reusser, Vollering, Van Vleuten. Those two are not going to pace. Lippert, Niewiadoma, Lelevita, the Lithuanian, and Emil Sik, the Belarusian.
Yep, correct.
So they get to the bottom. No one paces. And the gap goes out to 45, 50 seconds again. All the work that they've just done, bringing it back to 12 seconds, goes out because we saw ELB and Cavalli having a discussion about who's to chase. And am I missing something? Am I stupid, Benji? Why, when a group of, say, 8 riders, most of whom have sort of priorities or objectives that are aligned, which is bringing back Van Dijk, except the 2 Dutch riders, they see, well, you have 2 teammates in the group. So regardless of how strong they might be, they're like, you have to ride on the front ELB, and we're not pacing, even though it lets the gap go out even more.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it was exactly what they were looking at. They were in the group together with Cavalli and Longoborghini. It took a while, and eventually Longoborghini was the one chasing for Cavalli. And from that point on, as we saw nobody, not a single soul in that group, obviously not expected by the Dutch because they had Van Dijk up front, but the rest should all have at least some intention to win this race and not ride for silver. And as a consequence, should try and help out the person that is chasing in that group. Sure, you're putting Cavalli in a seat, but you're also making sure you're staying in the competition, because if the gap keeps on growing from 10 to 20 to 30, 40, 50 seconds, then you're fucked for this race. And then you've got one Cor Vos climb to try and fix everything again. And perhaps the initial portion, just after that second climb after the descent, we saw that tiny attack by Reuser, but eventually, like you said, nobody except for Longoborghini doing the work. And perhaps their idea was, I'm going to try it again on the next climb. I think Lippert was thinking that, as she saw on the previous climb, that the rest was dropping, and Niewiadoma was the second strongest there as well. So probably she was like, okay, I can also make the difference there. But you can't make the difference when the gap is back up to 50 seconds. When that happens, you're unlikely to catch Van Dijk back completely, and it's very risky from that point onwards. And I think at that point in the race, I was like, okay, Van Dijk has this, because this chase is not cooperating. But there was some light in the tunnel on the climb itself. We did have attacks, but you think it's logical to go for single-handed attacks on the climb then if the gap is already at 45 seconds? Isn't cooperation better?
When cooperation starts, it's very fragile. And if someone does something to break that cooperation, it all falls into a pile. So we had ELB pacing. The gap went out to 52, and then it was like at 45 seconds. She stops pacing, completely done, by the way. She wasn't faking. She was done. Cavalli stops pulling. Doesn't attack. And I'm like, so the point of that was what exactly? Lippert, actually, I saw Lippert pacing for a little bit. Lippert was pacing, and then Reuser countered her. And once that happened, it's like, you've been sitting in, you could have, okay, it's not ideal with Demi Vollering in the group. I hear people probably be like, well, if you pace and Demi Vollering sits in, then you're probably going to lose that way. You're right. You're probably going to lose that way. You might lose that way, but if you don't catch Van Dijk, you definitely will lose that way. So Niewiadoma, Reuser in particular, and Lippert should have been rolling turns with Elisa Longoborghini. They didn't. Reuser attacks, falls in a heap, gap goes up to a minute, and I think they were eating into Van Dijk on the climb a lot, Benji.
Significantly.
Like if that gap was 30 seconds, 25 seconds at the base, they take her back, right?
Yep, exactly. The gap went down from like 45 seconds at the bottom to 18 to 19, 20 seconds when Lippert went for another one of those crazy attacks, and the rest was trying to follow. And at the start of that climb, what surprised me most here was all of this happens, and Longoborghini still controls the group and tries to still crawl it back. But the second that Longoborghini gets off the front of this chasing group, everybody looks at each other again, and nobody takes over. And that's when you know the race is done.
Exactly. And it's not a matter of legs. I just think, and it's understandable, I think there's a mentality that pacing with AVV and Vollering in the group, if you start pacing as the leader of your team, that's just something you can't do because, you're going to lose or whatever. But and probably you're saying also, well, Marlon Rosa has two teammates. What's she to do with Switzerland? Got two teammates. Niewiadoma's got no teammates with her. Well, I've been saying it for a while, said it all this year in the context of SD Works. Marlon Rosa, you have a new teammate. She's called Kasia Niewiadoma. Hello, welcome, Kasia. You two are going to be riding together because you both probably don't want to go to the line with AVV or Vollering, and you need to bring Van Dijk back. So, but maybe race radios meant they didn't know the gap exactly, Benji. Maybe they think Van Dijk's just up there, because they saw her before on the last climb. She's just up there, but I think maybe that's why. Do you think they should have radios where it's a neutral radio, at least telling them accurate gaps regularly?
Yes, firstly, I think for safety precautions, because there are a lot of events in races this year already that need the race radio to announce it. For example, if if a train is passing, for example, stuff like that. Or the race stopped in that race where Remco Evenepoel had to stop because there was a fire up the road. All that stuff, sure, you can have a motorbike that starts waving ahead of everybody, but it's much easier to have like one default race radio with just race radio info, not team radio info. That would be a nice concept that I'd love to see try, because then you don't have that tactical feeling of team radios, but you do have the safety precautions and the organizers per information. Because I feel like in a race, riders should know the gaps while they are riding and who is in which group, mainly because I feel like it makes the riders look really stupid sometimes. If, for example, the Dutch are chasing the Dutch, stuff like that. And I don't enjoy when riders are looking stupid in a race for a reason that is not their own.
Yeah, I agree. I think a neutral radio which says the accurate gaps, maybe it would have changed behavior. I think it definitely would have changed the initial Lippert attack timing. What happened afterwards, maybe not so much in my opinion. But Van Dijk rides away from this. Once they don't catch her on the climb, it was a wrap because
I have a question, actually.
She powers away. Yes, sir.
In the chase, we have a moment where Reuser was still pacing a tiny bit. I think it was after that Lippert pacing you said for a second. When she asked Reuser to take over, Reuser went for a bit of a move, and then Van Vleuten started talking to Reuser. And I don't know what they said to each other, but they kept talking for 20 seconds riding at the front of the group. And I'm really curious what was said there. Incredibly curious, because I don't know.
I don't know either. Maybe AVV was saying, Marlon, if you can you pace this back for me so I can go for gold, possibly, or the European champs jersey. But yeah, it wasn't possible from that point. Van Dijk rides away with winning the European Championship. She'll wear the jersey next year. Quite a fetching jersey, usually, actually. And you can see the finessing in that group. A group that had brought the gap down to like 25, 30 seconds on the last climb. And then the gap grew to a minute 18 to them in the sprint behind, with Liana Lippert winning that sprint. She looked on really good form today, Lippert. Maybe the best condition we've seen from her this year, out of Leila taking bronze for Lithuania, Neviadoma fourth, and Vollering, Cavalli, Reuser, Ameliusik, and Van Vleuten ninth. Balsamo wins the second, third group for Italy behind, ahead of Kopecky and Co. So, what's I think a shame about this race, Benji, is when AVV is on and rides away on a hard parcours, there's just nothing you can do. There isn't anything you can do, or if Vollering or Van der Breggen does something crazy too, that's fine. But I think in a day where they were back at the level playing field, where I'm like, I don't know if AVV is stronger than Lippert today. And then to have them not bring the break back and finesse and not give themselves the chance to win in that situation, I guess must be very disappointing for those women, because yeah, it was a day maybe they could have won, particularly for Italy as well. But yeah, what do you see for Van Dijk, Benji? She's still in fantastic form. Next year for SD Works, she's not SD Works, rather. She's one of the only good Dutch women not on SD Works. She doesn't have a contract with Trek Segafredo next year. She's 34, but she's still riding at top level. I mean, yeah, I think she. Have you heard any word on whether she's keeping going or not?
I quite literally have no clue about her next season, but I hope she keeps going. I feel like she offers a lot for the sport, and she also does a lot for other riders in her team. She rides a lot for Hosking in races where Hosking is the rider that could do well for Dijk in certain races for Lamborghini. It doesn't often happen where she gets the opportunity to go for the victory unless it's a smaller race or a time trial these days. And I guess I enjoy seeing it happen on a race today. It's obviously influenced by the fact that the chasing group, the cohesion was literally stabbing my eyes, but it's still a very deserved victory, and she went for it and she ended up winning. So very well deserved, and I'm very happy about her winning, actually, because I'd love to see that shirt on a Trek jersey if she stays at Trek, or just the jersey that she's in, because she's going to show it. And it might not be in the finals. It might be domestiquing for Hosking and so forth or something. But in some races, she's going to show it like that as well. And I like that.
Yeah, she won the Healthy Aging Tour GC this year. She won a few races. She won a TT there, Prologue at Lotto Belgium Tour. She won, and now she won this race in a lot of seconds as well. But yeah, speaking of seconds, let us know down below, by the way, what you thought of the tactics in the group today. Are we missing something? Is there something we didn't see, or race radio is playing a bigger part than we give them credit for? But we we'll just wrap up the TT that happened during the week this is in Trento Adige, by the way, beautiful area. 22-kilometer TT for the women. We'll do the men's TT wrap up tomorrow. And it's pretty flat. There's an intermediate time check at 10.5 Ks in, and the rider who's been doing so well in the TTs recently, Malin Roysa. She won again. She was actually, I don't know if you can ever put her the favourite. I mean, I think
she was.
She was
Ladies Tour time trial, she won.
Yeah.
I think she was very close on the mountain time trial as well, but that's obviously a very different parcours, so less representative here. She was second at the Olympics time trial, behind Van Vleuten, ahead of everybody else. I had her as favorite for this time trial personally. Van Dijk was her competition in my eyes.
Why didn't ABV do it?
I don't know. It's very flat, and perhaps that's the reason that she thought, let's focus on the road race.
True.
Or she wanted to give like another Dutch rider a chance, because sure, the time trial positions are less than road race positions. So perhaps she was like, okay, this person is more likely to have something useful out of this race, so let's have Marcus do it instead.
True, and she just had the Ceratizit Love Welter challenge. She's been racing a lot. I think she went back and did some other training and recovery. So maybe, it's what Benji described. But Malin Roysa won that TT, nearly a 50-kilometre-an-hour average, 27 minutes and 13. She beat Van Dijk, who got the better of her today, who came second, taking bronze, 19 seconds behind. Then big gap of 1 minute and 2 from Roysa to Brennauer. Germany 3-4, Lisa Klein came fourth on 122. Then Rihanna Marcus fifth on 143. Then the rest of the top 10 were Konenko for Ukraine, Kiesenhofer, obviously the Olympic road race champion, then Victoria Busi, Sarah van der Velde, and Emma Norsgaard 10th. But I want to pick out a rider, Benji, who's coming into some good shape. She was good as a domestique today for Netherlands. Rihanna Marcus. Again, She moved to Jumbo this year, 27. I think she could be mixing it up in some G1 groups of 7 in the classics next year.
I think that is a very plausible take. She had that breakaway in Tour of Norway. She was proving herself strong as a domestique in mostly the hill races at the start of the season, if I recall correctly. I swear she had top 20 in one of them.
Liège 12th.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that race. Also top 20 in Omloop, it seems, if I check. Yes. I think that she's likely going to prove even more important next year. Marianne Vos was not totally great today. She's likely... How long, I'm not sure if it's harsh to ask this, but do we know what the life plan of Marianne Vos is? As in, does she have a certain moment where she sees herself stop cycling? Or
I don't think it's as cut and dried as Chantal van der Broek-Black and Van der Breggen. I haven't heard anything, because those two have definite plans for retirement in the next year or so, within the next year. For Vos, I'm not sure. I mean, she's only 34. She's still on top level. I would say she's been better this year than last year.
Yeah.
Simac Ladies Tour, she was pretty dominant the other week. But I think, again, neither of those two have a contract, according to PCS at least, with Jumbo Visma Women next year yet. I know it's only September. I think Vos won't have too much trouble getting a contract from somewhere. But I assume that Jumbo Visma will want to keep 2 Dutch women that are that strong. But I think it's, as you said, Benji, Vos kind of, rightly so, like at Gen Wevelgem, for example, the whole team has to chase for Vos, had to chase CLB for Vos, and she won. But you're right, it creates there's less opportunities for Marcus. So maybe they split her and they say, you're okay for leadership, we're going to split you at different races to Marianne Vos next year. Or maybe they play her in the Ellen van Dijk role like today. And that's what they do. They get her in breaks and then Vos sit behind like Vollering did. I think that's another way to use Rihanna Marcus as well. But any other takeaways?
I think at the start of the stage, Rihanna Marcus was one of the riders that the Netherlands was using today to try and get into groups with, at the start of the race, or try and neutralize groups from the inside, or try and follow attacks. So she was definitely potentially trying what Van Dijk was doing, but it was just that one move with Van Dijk that happened. So perhaps that's exactly what they were trying today, and we might see her do that a few times more in the future, because I feel like she would be great at it. When it comes to other takeaways of today, I feel like I think the Lithuanian did really well today, and I think she might be I feel like she might be good in the Italian classics upcoming, as in Emilia, stuff like that. So I can't wait to see what Emilia gives as well.
She's won that before.
Has she?
Yeah,
I
I'm
didn't know
pretty
that.
sure. Don't quote me on it. Maybe like 3 years ago or something. Yeah, she won it. She won it 3 years ago. She's won loads of Italian. She's come second. She came second in it last year as well. Behind. Is that behind? Yeah, Cecilia Uttrup Ludwig. So that's she'll be good in these sort of classics.
It's basically a race. Second in 2020. In 2019, she was fourth. In 2018, she was first. In 2017, she was second. And then the year before, fourth. And then 2015, she was 24th. Okay. So the dominance started in 2016. Absolute madness.
So she's on Aram Italia Basso Bikes Vaiano, which I think is just like a Conti level team or Pro Conti team. Yeah. I'm not sure. It has a lot of Lithuanians.
There's no Pro Conti in women's cycling.
Okay. It says Italians and Lithuanians. But yeah, she's pretty strong. So I look forward to seeing her there. But that's our wrap up of the European Championships, women's road race mainly, and the TT. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you at the men's TT and road race recap tomorrow. Can't wait to see Richie Port take out the honours. Ciao.